Hello, veterinary friends. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I have a wonderful guest for you. His name is Brian Curtis, and he is an author and a teacher who helps people understand how to unlock their potential. He has a new book coming out called The Dream, which will be available in the spring sometime. And he has expertise in changing belief systems, fostering creativity, and living with purpose, which are all things we can all learn from. Welcome to the podcast, Brian.
Thanks, Julie.
I'm
Sure,
delighted to have you.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of things that I learned from you as well.
Well, that's why this is fun. We get to know each other, we get to learn from each other, which is really fun.
Right.
So my first question to all my guests is to tell me your story. Like, kind of, how did you get to where you are today?
Boy, do you want the long version or first?
Whatever you want to share. You can start from wherever you want and tell me whatever you want.
I mean,
I feel like it helps other people see how convoluted life can be and how people make different choices and get to where they are now.
yeah, I mean, the choices we make are all choices usually based in deep childhood wounding.
Mm.
From a very young age, all of us, it doesn't usually matter what environment we grew up in, unless, you grew up in some kind of enlightened community somewhere, which is probably not the case. Um, because we all enter an education system that tries to cookie cutter us into specific roles, right? There's really not very many when you think about, what we're taught in school. They're not really offering anything different other than, there's a few class of professions that they say, well, this is what's going to give you your dream life. Well, is it? Do 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 I only have a choice between being an attorney, a doctor, or an engineer?
Right.
For the most part, those are kind of your three choices. If you want to go to school and try to create a life where you feel like you can provide enough for your family to be happy, where, there are trades out there that you can provide, but, a lot of the trades, I was in the trades for 25 years. And it was because I went to college for 2 years as a chemie. I was going to become a chemical engineer, and I decided that it just wasn't the path for me. I didn't want to get stuck in a lab all day long. I loved the thought, how chemistry worked, but I always knew that there was something deeper that was going on there, that it felt like there was a lot um, to this universe that we just didn't understand. And I wanted to delve more into my life as far as discovering myself. So, you know, as a 19-year-old kid or 20-year-old kid, you don't really know which way you're going. And so after a couple of months of installing satellite dishes when they first came out, when DirecTV first came out, this is back in the 90s, 1996, we just had friends of the family that were electricians, and they just offered me a job because they knew I was a smart kid, had a pretty good work ethic. And so I started an electrical trade and worked as a construction electrician for 14 years until about 2010. And then I joined a public utility in 2010 and worked there until November 2021. And taught me a lot. It taught me more about, the life that we live has much more to do about uh, our ability to love one another and interact with each other and love and or give and receive love in our environments to be successful and not get caught up in, conflicts in our environment, uh, get caught up into drama. All that does is pull us into conflict. And unfortunately, most of the work environments, those bigger work environments, especially public utilities, you find out, there's so much conflict that's built within the structure that you're working in, it's almost impossible to get out of it, which is why we see such a big rise in entrepreneurs in, society right now. There's so many people leaving businesses because there's so much conflict that's kind of built within that system that we just don't want to do that anymore. Not only that, but maybe we don't want to live or have a profession that was offered to us when we were growing up. So there's just so many of those things that are fears kind of that we have to overcome, that, we have to go through in life just to get to a place where um, yeah, we're at peace with what we want to do. So
So
I guess,
you're working as an electrician at a big company. So when did the light bulb go off over your head and you're like, okay, this isn't what I want to do. I want to do something else.
well, I had pretty much learned everything that I wanted to learn. I had the privilege. I mean, my education in the electrical industry was I had a lot of variety. So, I started out as a residential electrician, and then I moved into doing commercial electrical work and hotels and just regular, you know, medium-sized commercial, buildings, and then moved into industrial, did a lot of industrial work, fry plants, nuclear plants, wind farms, uh, never did a big solar project, but I know how they work because I've worked on, I've installed smaller solar systems, and then worked at a public utility at a hydroelectric facility here on the Columbia River. So, and you have to deal with pretty much every form of electrical work at a public utility like that, whether it's generation, transmission, control work, motor, you name it. There isn't anything that you don't learn at a big utility like that. So, I kind of got to the end of the road for for me personally. And there were other things that I could learn there, but for me, my life was more wrapped up in, you know, how can we work together in a healthier way so that we prioritize our families? When you work with a group of people for a long period of time, those are your family.
Hmm.
You can't ignore it. You spend half your time with those people. And
Right.
if we don't treat each other like family, why aren't we treating each other like family? What is the root cause of why we're not doing that? Why are we pointing the fingers at each other at work when something happens instead of just picking each other up and forgiving one another for whatever happened and moving on? And uh, all that competition in the workplace leads to division and conflicts, and it doesn't feel like you're going into a family that's
Team.
supporting one another.
Right.
Um, so that's why I left. I quit my job in November of 2021. And, when you first jump out of the entrepreneur community, it's a challenge because you don't know what's going to help you and what's not going to help you, what people are offering. Because there's so many people offering different stuff. Most of those things
Sure.
that people offer are marketing. How many
Right.
marketers are there on LinkedIn? It's like, hey, we can market
So
what you have to
many. They
sell.
reach out to me every day.
Yeah, all of us do. Any of us that are on LinkedIn or any other business platform, you're going to have marketers reaching out to you constantly because
Right.
they're making their business trying to get to market whatever it is that you have to offer. But um, what is it that you have to offer that somebody can't do for themselves? That's the tricky part. Uh, you know, Life coaching is, to me, we've talked about this a little bit before we started this, and life coaching, therapy, all of those things kind of you have to deal with somebody in the short term to try and point them in the right direction, to make sure that they're doing the right things for themselves so that they can live a happy, more fulfilled life. But um, to me, it's all about building community, and uh, you're surrounding yourself with people that, want to create these equal give and take relationships, where we're building something together. Uh, yeah.
So
I
what's the key to that? I mean, as veterinarians, most of the people that listen to my podcast are veterinarians or they work in that industry, and they're usually small businesses. So anywhere from, 10 employees to 50 or 100. Um, how do you recommend, or do you, that we change that idea of, having each other's back in the workplace and getting rid of the competition and being kind to each other? And like, is that part of what you teach?
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of metaphors that we see in our environment that happen all the time that is giving us the same story over and over again. And I just watched it. I had never seen the new Wonka. I can't remember the actor's
The
name.
brand new one? Yeah, I haven't seen it. So
And
I've seen the other two, the older ones.
I hadn't seen it either, but it's a very powerful message.
Really?
And most of the time we get the same message over and over again in different movies. Hollywood gives us the same message. But at the end, yeah, I won't try to give the whole story here. It would take too long. But at the end, he's opening up this Wonka bar that his mom had helped him make because this was a totally different version of Willy Wonka, and I didn't know that going
A
in.
different story. Yeah.
Yeah, completely different. The first two, with Gene Wilder and Johnny Depp were pretty much basically the same story.
Right. Just
One was a little
redone.
darker, you
Yeah.
know.
Right. But redone
Um,
a little. Yeah.
Yeah, this one had to do with somebody that just had an entrepreneurial spirit and was wanting to sell delicious chocolate to a community. And so he goes into a new community, but finds out that everybody in that community is pretty much being controlled by the Slugworth. The Slugworth character in this movie was a chocolate maker as well, but he was jealous of Wonka immediately because he saw what Wonka had, his spirit, and it was coming out in his chocolate. And so he wants to trap him, right? This common thing where uh wants to suppress the spirit of somebody that has a more innovative and more creative spirit than uh what he had. He just wanted to control. And so it's funny because the police officers in this movie are chocoholics, so they're being controlled by
You can
Slugworth's
control them by chocolate.
chocolate, right?
That's an interesting idea.
Right, yeah, controlled by chocolate. But to get to the point, um, the chocolate bar that he opens at the end of the movie has a golden ticket in it, and the golden ticket and it actually is the same message from the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory when you think about it. On the golden ticket, it says, and it was a note written by his mom. He said, it's not the chocolate that matters, it's the people that you share it with.
Mm,
So, all of us and you see businesses fall down because people get too preoccupied with the material, the whatever it is that you're building, whatever it is that you're doing. Um, Fear of not having enough or trying to get that another position in the company because you weren't trying to get more money instead of focusing on the fact that you're just there with a bunch of people and you're spending time with people and you want to build something together. And it really is that simple, and that was really the overall message with the first movie because Charlie just wanted to be a kid. He didn't want to take Wonka's, everlasting gobstopper for himself just to sell, that wasn't the
right.
point. He just wanted to be a kid. And that was why Wonka was who he was. He was a builder, he was an imaginer. He wanted to create something, but he had to isolate himself because the world was, obviously not letting him do that. And so he found a boy just like him who wanted to create with him without any constrictions. So I think that's ultimately the message that I think that we all need to hear. Because if you don't feel like you can create from whatever it is you want to create for the people and the community around you, then you've got a fear of not being able to do that. Um, yeah.
And does that fear, is that what feeds, I don't know what the right word is, but do you think that fear of creating and the naysayers and the competition or whatever it is in industry that keeps us fearful, do you think that's what keeps us from enjoying life or experiencing the camaraderie or the love or whatever it is that is important?
Yeah, the biggest challenge, and this is something that I've learned that I'm writing about in my second book. The biggest challenge is always to ground out the negative influences in your environment. Because if you can't, um, if you get wrapped up in other people's negative projections, because invariably when you go to work in any work environment, it doesn't matter what it is, if you're working with somebody who is feeling less than, right? Maybe they're insecure in some way. And this can show up in ourselves, right? We don't, a lot of times our insecurities will unconsciously project those into our environment as well. But if somebody's projecting their insecurities on you and trying to pick themselves up and above you, uh, you'll just be ugh, you won't want to be there. And the ability to ground that out and express kind of a loving, healing energy to those people that are trying to do that is really one of the hardest things to overcome. Because a lot of people will just get into the point where it's just, I got to leave, I got to get out of here, I have to block that off, instead of saying, hey, look, you don't have to try and prove yourself to me. I love you,
Yeah,
right?
I can change that. Yeah.
Yeah, that ability to change your mindset to where you can actually change your environment from the inside out and teach people to change themselves from the inside out to create together, and don't get worried about what it is you're creating. Because when you get too worried about that, then that's when you try to prove yourself to everybody else and you're trying to compete and all this stuff, when it's just like it really doesn't matter what we're building as long as we're doing it together and we're happy spending time together. So, yeah.
So how does that relate to the inner beliefs? Like you obviously have to start with yourself if you're going to influence the others around you that you're working with. So let's say you're in kind of a toxic work environment, which I don't really love those words, but a lot of people use them.
Yeah.
Let's say you're in that environment where you're unhappy and the other people around you are unhappy. Where does it start? Like, where do you recommend people start to change that? You said you change belief systems. Is that where it starts?
Yeah. You really have to be able to learn how to do it for yourself, to make yourself feel good no matter where you're at. And it's a lot of self-care, self-rest, and belief that you can do that. Uh, the spiritual community is invariably mostly they kind of, and they have a tendency to isolate themselves, right? Too much of the spiritual community will have a tendency to isolate themselves and then just sell healing services. Say, hey, I can help you heal, whatever it is you're going through. But
Right.
we haven't moved into, I think this is what we're seeing as a society, is we're slowly getting ready to move into some healthy co-creative development that we haven't seen before, right? Most of the creations that we see in society are a gross national product. You could say the products that we're producing are all being produced for profit, right? They're all just really
Make
focused.
a buck.
Yeah, make a
Yeah.
buck. It doesn't matter how it's impacting somebody. But when we look and see what those products are doing to the public, they're really having a negative impact on our mental health. It's not healthy to have a phone that is made to trigger the dopamine response. So it tries to pull you into that device every time it rings. That's not a
Right.
good thing. Right. Why are we producing these things? Right.
Yeah. And why are we falling victim to it? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you're producing products that are intentionally made to manipulate your emotional state, then they're just not healthy. And so you want to heal the people around you in a way that's doing it in a productive way. And when we start creating products, we want to create products that are built on that foundation where we want to heal our lives, our relationships, and make people feel good about getting up in the morning, right?
Right.
Uh, have the desire to get up in the morning. It's like, hey, this is going to be a good day. I get to go work with somebody who has the same mindset that I do, that it doesn't matter what we're making, that we're just there mostly to spend our lives together and enjoy each other's company. So
Okay. So when you say you help people foster creativity, is that part of changing your mindset or healing the inner traumas? Like, where does explain that to me, the fostering creativity?
so yeah, when you get into your creative energy and you start creating in your environment, if you and like we talked about, just as simple as writing a book or just writing those
Right.
things down that you go through, you start to learn that you start creating your own reality. You're creating your own state of being. So if you can learn how to create your own state of being, you can teach other people to do the same. And if you can teach other people to do the same, they're more likely to, uh, and it happens over time. It's all about self-care because at the beginning, if you've never done it before and believe that you can change your own reality, then you just, how do you do that, right? How do you
Yeah, you feel stuck
positively,
if you have no first step or no one helping you.
right?
You're stuck.
And what you find out is, you start. healing your environment, your closest environment, your friends and family, the people that you're closely interacting with, because you find that you realize it's a lot of self-reflections and deep inner work when you're creating something for yourself, because you're always coming up against whatever is keeping you from doing that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll start to be much more sensitive to that in other people and make sure that you're rounding out those negative, influences that they have in their life. And you'll start, making sure that it's your primary objective to pick those people up, right? And they will.
So it's kind of like starting with changing the way you're thinking, changing your mindset, getting on a better plane with yourself, and then getting into the creative space, and then offering that to others around you, your family and the people that you work with.
Right. And you're not actively doing it. You're not pressing yourself on anybody, but you'll find yourself showing up in a much better way than you ever were
Sure.
before, because
Right.
because uh you're dealing with those things internally for yourself, making sure you're getting proper rest and having faith in your own abilities to feel like you have something to offer for the people
Right.
around you. Whereas when we go to businesses, if we're just focused on just simple tasks, it's neutral. There isn't you're not positively, and most of the time you're probably in some sort of negative cycle, because you're just focusing on just making money. So to survive, you're in survival mode. And so everything
Right.
becomes more of a, if I don't do this, then I'm going to die, or, it's a victimized mindset more than anything,
Right.
where it completely flips that state of being when you get into your creative energy, because now you have to create positivity on your creative circuit to get a positive outcome that you're receiving. And it forces you to kind of humble yourself to your environment as well. Whereas, if you're just strictly focused on money, um, money is a control mechanism, right? You use it to control the energy of the people, because let's say I have $1 million. I don't have to be of service to anybody if I have $1 million. Right.
Yeah, I suppose so, because then you can make your own choices.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can tell people to, hey, I'm going to promote a new business. I got this new idea. Boom.
Right.
Pay a bunch of people to do it for you, and I can be disconnected and just make more money. Right.
Right. Right.
Just completely disconnected. Whereas
Yeah.
getting into your creativity allows you to create more healing energy for your environment instead of just dictating your environment.
Yeah. And when you say creativity, are you suggesting that people find something like typically creative, like writing or painting or dance or singing, or that kind of creativity? Or are you talking more about kind of more of the mindset and being creative with what you're doing? I guess I
I
don't know if
think
that's a
both.
good question.
I
Both.
think it,
Okay.
yeah, I think, if you're, and this is all depending on the individual. Let's say, and
Sure.
for a veterinarian, let's say you're probably seeing a lot of animals. Veterinarians end up dealing a lot with dogs, cats, horses, right?
Yeah.
Cows,
Yeah. And
of course,
people, lots of people,
lots of people, right?
which is
And
the
so
hard part.
yeah, it can be the hard part, because we're so attached to our animals. You
Yeah.
know, for a lot of people, those are our best friends. And so, um, yeah, you're really trying to help people and make sure that you're getting them in the right mindset. Say, hey, look, it it is difficult, right? You're always going to be, when you're a public servant in any way, it's going to be difficult. You're trying to ground out people's fears and anxieties when they come to you.
Right. Right. It's a highly emotional charged thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just having a creative outlet, any kind of creative outlet after that, whether it's writing, I would always suggest somebody write a small book about what they were doing, something that even if they don't publish it, so they can pass down to their family. Say, hey,
Sure.
look, um, this is what Aunt, Jean, this was her life as a veterinarian, and
Yeah.
so interesting what she went through with,
Well, there's so many stories that veterinarians have that,
oh
you
gosh.
know, that so many crazy stories.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Dogs eating certain things,
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the most fascinating things about being a vet. It's all the stories and the things that people do. So yeah, so it could just be having a journal and writing down all your stories. That's creative.
Yeah.
Mm.
Getting and like anything that you say, just get out there and meet new people all the time because there's so many people out there and we're all the salt of the earth, you know. Even even if you see, for me, I don't care if you're in a super negative way or whatever you're going through. To me, it's just it's all a growth process, and so I kind of I value all of it. I don't care where you're at or what you're doing. I don't judge because
Yeah.
maybe you're just on an outlet and you just felt like you just had to get a bunch of negative energy out there and hey, I throw it at me. I don't care.
Yeah. Well, and that's a terrific mindset to have in I'm sorry if you can hear that. I have a lawnmower going outside my window
Right.
right now. They always pick the time I'm podcasting to come by. Um, if you can keep in that mindset of that all people are fascinating and all their problems are fascinating, and no matter whether they're having a bad day and they're unloading it on you, like that mindset in and of itself will help you feel better.
Yeah. Where you're not attached to any kind of outcome where like if you have an attachment to say, well, if this person isn't in this mood, then I'm not going to be happy, right?
Right. Or if they're not happy, then I can't be happy.
Right. Then
Yeah.
now you're attached to something that now you're like a pinball machine. You're just a pinball
Right.
bouncing off of everybody else's emotions. You have to really master yourself. And that's why, that creative outlet is so important because you're finding that, hey, I can get myself into any state at any time. It's my
Right.
choice. Is irregardless of anybody else. And
Mm-hmm.
and understanding that will lead you to, well, how can I incorporate that and maybe work with some other people? I mean, this is what goes through my mind because more than anything, I love community and I love my time. I will always have my personal creative projects, uh,
Sure.
but more than anything, I would love to create community to build something with somebody else where we're not attached to the outcome. The reason that we're doing it is because we want to spend time with each other. It's not because we and I believe that if you can get it with the right group of people, then the thing that you are creating is going to be something that is magical, right? It's going to be that
Sure.
really good chocolate that nobody else wants.
Right. Yeah. No matter what it is.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there'll be the slug. There's invariably going to be the slugworth, for
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah. But if you
But
can let them have their emotions and you can keep the happier emotions with you and your team that's creating, and it's
yeah,
going to be all so much better.
it won't matter what slugworth's doing.
I love that. So tell me, I read in your bio that you were, or maybe are, still are, an extreme whitewater rafter.
Yeah.
Tell me about them.
So
And
I
what
got
kind
into
of stuff
whitewater
does that
rafting a long
teach?
time ago because I had a friend that really wanted to do it, and I was like,
Yeah.
sure, I'll do that. Um, well, I guess it's been 25 years ago now.
Okay.
Well, it was, my first whitewater rafting experience was before that. Salmon River, the Deschutes River, those are kind of the two main ones here on the West Coast that people go to. But there's so many others, between Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. It's one of the whitewater rafting capitals of the world because you've got the Rockies and the Cascades right here. There's a few in California, but uh, Idaho specifically, because the Rockies are so vast and there's so many places. But whitewater rafting to me is a magical thing just because you're going down a river where there's conflicts constantly.
Rocks
Like,
and
well, they call them conflicts,
rapids. Is
rapid.
that what it's really called? Is that the real word?
Yeah, it's a
Conflicts.
conflict. It's a
I love
conflict
it.
where because you've got where the currents start to diverge and they
Right.
start clashing into each other. So
Okay. That's what makes it whitewater.
yeah, it's a conflict. I mean, a
I
dam,
love it.
a dam on a river is a conflict. You're creating
Sure.
conflict on the river to trap the energy of that water. So there's a lot of energy in those conflicts. Uh,
Nice.
if you don't surrender to the conflict, and if you try to fight it, you can drown, right? There's a lot of spirituality that gets wrapped up in, especially in rivers, because
Yeah.
rivers have always been very interesting to me. And when you really examine what a river is the a lifeblood of the planet. It's part of the water circuit. You know, the water evaporates from the ocean, and then or the large bodies of water, might not be an ocean, could be a large lake, like Lake Michigan or something, and precipitates into snow, which creates that year-round water flow circuit in our rivers that make it slowly back to the heart of the system, which is the ocean. When you look at your own body, your veins and arteries are just rivers, are they're either the providing circuit or the return circuit back to the heart. So um, they all run into convergences, and I mean it's structured exactly the same way when you look at it. A river delta, if you look at a river delta, it's a branching circuit that runs back into a big energy center. Um, and so life is like a river. You get on the river of life. That term, the river of life, is a real term, and you
Right.
learn that you kind of have to stay in the current. If you don't want to stake yourself and try and stay in one place in the current, because it'll pull you under. The current will pull you under, and you'll drown if you don't let go. You have to let go, stay in the current, and you really don't know what's going to be around the corner next, even if you've been on the same river 100 times, because rivers change daily. And a flood will cause the river. Sometimes there's a flood and the river changes permanently forever.
Right.
Um, there's so many aspects to rivers that are exactly like life that people have written about this. There have been some really hardcore whitewater rafters that, because of the nature of rivers, and they realize that the river could kill them at any moment, and you have to respect it. Um, that the process they were going through was just their ability to surrender to the outcome and stay mindful and focused on every part of the river. Because when they get into conflicts, you have to just make sure you're in the current, and you're not fighting the current. You're just staying in the current, where the current looks like it's heading downriver, where it's still going downriver, instead of getting caught in the side somewhere. Or um, yeah.
I love that. As you're saying all of that, I'm like, that applies so well to what we do in vet med. Like there's something different every day. You never know what's going to come in the door. The outcomes are varied and sometimes awful and sometimes wonderful. And you really, if you could surrender to that river of work that comes in your door every day and just, be alert and stay with it.
Yeah.
That's a really good metaphor for vet med.
Yeah, the ones that have to deal with that the most are firefighters, right?
Mm,
Firefighters have to deal with, and they never know what trauma is going to come through the door. And when you're working in bigger cities, I actually have quite a few family members and personal friends that are in that industry, so I understand what they deal with. Um, it's very difficult when you get a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you go out to a car accident where you see a family get you know, slaughtered
destroyed.
or
Mm,
something like that.
yeah.
It's not an easy thing. So there's a lot of PTSD that gets wrapped up in that, and
Mm,
you're not, all of a sudden you're constantly waiting for that phone call where you're imagining some new terrible thing that's going to happen. So uh, that psychology of how to ground out any kind of negativity or negatively thinking about what's going to happen next is paramount to being able to function healthily, in those environments.
right. Right.
Otherwise, you're a nervous wreck.
Right.
So yeah, for sure.
And that reminds me of the whole idea of being present. So you're not worrying about what's happening in the future or what's happening in the past, that you're staying present. And I know you talk about that. So tell
And
me
not
what you,
reliving those traumas from the past, right?
right.
Because otherwise, you'll just keep reliving them. There is our medical industry is really changing quite a bit. There's a health reform. I've met quite a few doctors that have moved out of the medical industry because they realize that the body is more of a heart, mind, body connection. You have to really service the mind first, or the body suffers. Um, I mean, we could talk about this for for quite a while. There's so much to talk about there.
Right.
Um, but firefighters end up, and I'm sure vets do the same thing, because if you have a lot of, you know, people going through massive trauma, that, something happens severely to their animal, and all of a sudden, maybe their dog got hit by a car, or,
Sure.
you
Yep.
know, ate something that's very not good for it. I mean, I
Right.
had some friends, that, so you're dealing with somebody that's in a traumatic state of mind. And if that's happening a lot, you have to do the things for yourself to make sure that you're in the right place at the right time, that you can ground that stuff out, and you're not just like, get away from me.
Right. Right. And overreacting or reacting to everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian, Andy called, you want breakfast?
Yeah. So, yeah.
So tell me briefly, before we get too long here, about the book, The Dream, that's coming out in the spring.
Um, yeah. So this book deals more primarily with that ability, the ability to do that, to work on that ability to not uh, get caught up in the negative emotional states of other people, and to be able to heal those states around you without, uh, that really does make our life successful. If you can ground out the conflicts in your own body and mind, then, and learn how to do that for other people, you can live anywhere. You can do anything, because that's the primary thing in our society that leads to dysfunctional relationships, right? When we're innerly conflicted, and we're expressing that conflict to the people around us, then we're creating conflict in our environment. People are going to want to naturally push you away, right?
Sure.
Instead of work with you. It's like, hey, you and the ability to ground those out is paramount. For it doesn't matter what you're selling, what you're doing, whether you're
Right.
a veterinarian, um, whether you're a marketer, whether you're a life coach, it doesn't matter. You have, if you don't know how to get yourself into the right place to service the people around you, then you're going to be unhappy no matter what. It doesn't matter who you're working with,
Right.
or where. So
So is the book a story that you turned into this lesson, or does it have
yeah.
step by step lesson? Okay, well, do you want to share it or not really? You want us to read the book?
Well,
Or
the
is it too
story,
long or too
yeah.
big?
So the story, the book is, so I begin in the book with Dharma, the mind, Dharma versus karma. Our mind creates the karma, or the interactions that we see around us. Dharma creates karma. And then I go through some movies that, as examples, that give different stories for different lessons for different reasons.
Okay, that sounds
Uh,
interesting.
And then after that, I start going through my personal story of after I wrote the first book that I wrote, because the first book that I wrote was about state of reality, about how everything works. It's called There Is Only One Heart, because when you look at any system, it always comes from and goes back to a central point. It doesn't matter if you're looking at a galaxy, or an atom, or your body, or a
Right.
tree, the heart of a tree. And there's always a creative side and then a receptive side. There's always two parts to every thing. And it's actually switching, and that switching process creates the currency of that thing. Or I mean the frequency of that thing. So that's time, is the switching of the positive and negative around a central point. Um, Knowing that, you know, and knowing those fundamentals made me realize, well, I should be just creating and not concerned about the outcome, and just allowing that positive creation to let me naturally receive. Uh,
Mm,
that's a hard process to go through, just understanding that. But then in practice, that's a long healing journey, because you have to be able to detach from the outcome. So that's my story after the movies that I give as examples. Like, so I used Hook as an example. I love
okay.
Hook,
Yeah, that's a good movie.
And there's so many things in that movie that, and you'll notice where he doesn't remember how to fly until he's able to use his imagination, and he's sitting at the table with the Lost Boys. And at first he just sees a bunch of empty bowls. He's like, everybody else is eating. It's like, he's like, this is terrible. And then until he got into the word game with Rufy, he didn't really open up his imagination because he realized that, I mean, it's just a game. Life is just a game. You're just playing a game and you're using your imagination to create what you want to create. And once he realized that, that's when he started to fly. And Hook's purpose was to get everybody to be worried about everything else and blaming your parents for everything.
Right, right.
Such a powerful movie. There's so much powerful, anecdotes in that movie. And how we forget how to fly from a young age. When you're kids, your imagination is soaring. Oh, we can do this and that.
Right.
And then the world tells you you have to do this.
Yeah, it beats the heck out of you, right?
Right. And then you forget what it is to be a kid again.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's partially about doing that. I love that.
Yeah.
So what did I not ask you that I should?
Well, I don't know. That's up to you. Uh,
Do you have
I
something that you wanted to talk about that I haven't asked?
Yeah, I mean, as far as, I guess we could send just a general message to people. It's just like, no matter what you're going through or wherever you're at, it's just part of a process. When you look at life, over the generations, we all grow a little bit as a society, and we're growing right now. So it doesn't matter. It gets too easy to get caught up in whatever's going on in the world and think negatively about it. But just look at it as a growing organism. It's learning about itself. Uh, yeah, I think that's generally speaking, that's the best message I can give anybody. And it doesn't matter if they're an individual or a group of people, or if you're looking at a whole country, it's learning about itself, and maybe it's unconsciously attacking its neighbor country because it thinks that it has to do that. But eventually it'll learn its lessons, and the people will stop pouring their energy into things that aren't
Aren't
serving.
useful. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. So tell people if they want to learn more about you or what you do or find the book when it comes out. Is there a place that they can look for you or contact you?
Yeah, you can look me up on LinkedIn under Brian Curtis, and my company is Decentralized Systems. I have several websites, bcurtis.org, circuitbreaker.com, circuit breaker spelt with a K because the C one was already taken. Uh, and
It makes it unique.
there is only one heart.com. That's my book website. And as of now, this week, it should be to where you can purchase the book through the website. I can't remember. It should be done this week. So
Like
that,
pre-purchasing kind of thing.
yeah, that was the
Okay.
the
Yeah,
book.
so by the time this podcast comes out, I'm sure it will be ready to roll. So if you want to learn more about it, you can go there and I'll have you send me all the information and I'll put it in the show notes so people can
Okay.
track it down for you.
And you can
Anything
always
else?
email me at bcurtis@bcurtis.org. I like hearing, about other people's interests or what they're doing, or, you know,
Right.
maybe there's
Their
a creative
creativity.
activity out there that somebody's interested in working with me with.
I love that. Yeah. Well, this has been really fun and interesting. I've learned a lot about the things that you're trying to do and the way that you think about things. You said that, you you were working in electrician and things like that, but I think you're a little bit of a philosopher.
A lot of it, yeah. It's philosophy goes into a lot of, but it's a grounded philosophy in a state of reality, and that's really why I wrote the first book,
I
because
love that.
it's we really have to understand about ourselves before we can apply that in our own lives.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah. I always, I think every chapter of my book or pretty much everything I ever write says you got to start with yourself. You got to learn about yourself and figure yourself out first before you can fix anything.
Exactly. You're right.
But I like what you say about influencing the people around you. Like that's so important. If you start to change and you start to feel better and think differently and, become happier, it will affect the others around you.
Well, we're influencing each other whether we like it or not.
Mhm.
Every time we interact with each other, we're influencing each other. And the key is to not get influenced by the negative projections of other people. Just because they're having a rough day doesn't mean that you have to have a rough day.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And that if we could just remember that one thing, the veterinarians would have an easier life. Because a lot of people that come to us are having a bad day for whatever reason, and we don't need to adopt to that mentality. We're just doing our job.
Create a safe space in your veterinary clinic, right? Where
Love that.
people feel like when they come in that it's like, wow, I'm glad I brought my animal here because it feels good here.
Because these people are all calm and loving and caring. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
a family. I love that. Well, it's been really fun talking to you. I appreciate you coming on the podcast today and sharing with us your book and all the things that you're trying to do to help people live a better life. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. This is Brian Curtis, everyone. So go check him out and check out the book when it is out, or it's almost probably will be out by the time we're talking about by the time this podcast gets out. You can at least go to the site and probably pre-order it, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, the first book's available on Amazon now, whether it's available on the website or not. My second book will be out this spring, like you said.
Perfect. I love it. Well, everybody have a beautiful week and adopt some of these things that Brian's recommending, and it'll probably be a better week. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you, Julie.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Brian.
Bye.